Welcome back, guys, to another video. This video is going to be about Colorado Buffaloes and the star players that are on the team, the players that are on the team that are household names. And out of the three players that are household names, in Travis Hunter, Shiloh, and Shador, 2 out of the 3 are the ones that I'm going to focus on right now on this video. Why? Because in due time, the things that I've been talking about are going to start coming to fruition. Not because I feel like I'm some type of psychic or I can see into the future, but there's certain things when you get older, you start to see certain patterns develop in people's behaviors and the decisions that they make and how they go about doing certain things. And against the establishment or against the way things are established. So I'll give you an example. If you're riding on the road, you have red lights, you have traffic lights, you have stop signs, you have yield signs, you have certain marks on the road that tells you to turn here and turn there. That's what I would say is an establishment, right? It's established. That's the way you're supposed to drive. And when you see a driver or two that are going outside, that are operating outside those confines, you start to think to yourself like, man, I don't think this guy driving like this is going to make it. Meaning that he may get into an accident or cause somebody else to get into an accident. Now, coming up with that assumption or coming up with that conclusion doesn't mean that the person coming up with that conclusion is a psychic or has some type of special power to predict the future. It just means that you understand that the things that are put in place for safety purposes. There's a reason for those stop signs and traffic lights and the yielding signs and so on and so forth. So let's go back to football with this. When you think about a program that's trying to establish itself as a powerhouse, remember, Coach Prime is not a mediocre guy. He doesn't do things to be mediocre. He does things because he likes to flash, and with flash comes expectations. And the expectations are not mediocre by a long shot. You don't want the cameras and the limelight on you just to be mediocre. No one does that. If the attention is going to be placed on you as a team and as a man, as a player, as a coach, you better believe that inside every competitor, inside every alpha male, if you consider yourself an alpha male or whatever you consider yourself, inside any male that has any degree of testosterone in their biome, they're going to want to exude a degree of excellence that shows that they're the best in what they are doing. If not the best, one of the best. So a lot of the things that I hear from a lot of Deion supporters or Coach Prime supporters is that he's won everywhere he's gone. He's won in high school. He's won in college. He won in the pro level, baseball and MLB and NFL. He's won as a coach when he coached at Jackson State. So there's a degree of expectation that comes with the name Coach Prime. Right? And we all agree. I agree. That's why when he took over the University of Colorado football program, I was like, okay, maybe perhaps he'll bring that winning pedigree and attach that winning pedigree to a program that's been irrelevant for quite some time, Colorado University or University of Colorado. So as we see certain things unfold, we saw how the season started well, and it derailed due to a lot of decisions that the head coach made, due to what he allowed and what he did not allow, due to what he permitted, what he advocated for, and what he promoted. You don't have to be the best X's and O's guy to be a head coach. I believe you have to know about football to a degree. You can't be totally ignorant about the game. The fact that Coach Prime played the game at the highest level. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl winner. So he has a degree of experience that goes beyond an ignorant person stepping into the position. So he's not ignorant of the game. We understand that he's a great motivator. We understand that he has a gift of gab, and he has a certain aura that's attractive, especially to young males. He talks a good game. If you have right people around you with a coach like that, who may not be the best X's and O's guy, you can still win. Because most of coaching is just managing men, managing your system, managing younger men, and managing the men that are under you in regards to defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators, linebacker coaches, quarterback coaches, wide receiver coaches, all those things. Coach Prime ran a program that was based upon getting his name out there, getting Colorado's name out there, getting his players' name out there, his favorite players' names out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you do that, again, you're cutting into the cloth of what the program is supposed to be about. The program is the only thing on the cloth. You can't have individual sectioned off agendas apart from the main goal. The main goal is the program. You should eat the program, sleep the program, talk the program. It should be all about the program. The program should be over you, over your personal goals and your personal agendas. Whatever personal goal you have has to align and merge itself with what's best for the program, because that's your job. People are paying money to go to that university. There's a lot of support behind you, Coach Prime, for people to see that program, the football program, reach its highest potential. Now, I'm saying all that to say this, that when I say certain things, because people don't want to listen. They don't want to take the time to actually listen. I don't know if it's because I know why it is that way. It's hard to move off of people we worship. And I say worship, and I use that term lightly, because a lot of people say, I don't worship no man, I worship God. But however, the way we attribute affections towards people who we care about is not balanced. And when it's not balanced, you're giving that person way too much credit than they deserve. With God, we always say, many of you guys always say, he can do no wrong. He's good all the time. He's loving. He's righteous. So even when people try to attack the gods you guys worship, you have an excuse. You have a reason, because you may say, oh, you don't understand the world. It's not God's fault. It's because of sin, or it's the free will of man that's put in the world in this predicament, and so on and so forth. There are 1,000 apologetics that are online that are do whatever they can to make sure that they absolve this God that they worship of any wrongdoing. And I feel that's what Coach Prime supporters are like. They deify Coach Prime to a degree that it absolves them from having any objectivity. It's removed from their mind frame. They're seeking out anyone who's critical to pounce on them, to call them a hater. I'm not a hater. I'm a supporter of Coach Prime, but because I support Coach Prime, I'm going to be critical. That's what normal people do. When you support something, you have an opinion. You have a particular worldview that you want to attach to that thing that you support, because you have an idea of how you want that thing to go. Now, it doesn't mean the way you want it to go is going to be perfectly right, but we owe it to one another to hear each other out before we cast the term of hater. Hate is a very strong word. Hate? No, I don't hate anybody. What I do not like is that Shiloh and Shador Remember, this is a team that's lost a lot of coaches. They are essentially starting all over again. The second year is going to be like their first year. I've done plenty of videos on it. You can look on my feeds. You can look up some of my shorts videos. I've said the same thing over again. A rebuild is not easy. The core tenets need to be in place in order for a rebuild to be effective. And those core tenets are being removed, being dispersed and spread all over the place. And yet we are in January, mid-January, and yet Coach Prime does not have a defensive coordinator. Alabama has replaced their coach already. We're still sitting here worried about who's going to be the defensive coordinator for Colorado Buffaloes. In the midst of all this chaos that's going on, and I say chaos because a rebuild needs to be tight. When I say tight, it doesn't mean, I'm not talking about wins and losses. I mean the parts, the ancillary parts that people don't pay attention to, because people usually like to pay attention to the product that's on the field. But before we see the product that's on the field, there are other parts that are going on behind closed doors that are causing that product on the field to look the way it looks. And most importantly, it's coaching. It's team camaraderie. It's team chemistry. If you are going to be part of something, if you want to quote unquote worship anything, you should worship what you're a part of. Okay, the program has to be first above all. Above all. Even above the God you claim you serve, because you're judged by the way you produce at your job, not with wins and losses. I mean, how you communicate with people, how you inspire other people, how you infect other people, the effect that you have upon the external things that are going on around you, how you uplift young men. All those things matter. If you're a believer, if you're, man of the word or man of God, then you're also going to be judged on how you produced. How did you handle the job that I gave you, son? If you believe. Okay? I don't like what I read yesterday online about Shiloh and Shador going to Paris during their first team meeting. And I read the subtitle. It said that they want to be multidimensional. Do you hear that? Do you hear the stupidity in that? You are a college athlete. You want to be multidimensional? This is their brand, folks. This is the Prime brand. This is what Coach Prime and the Sanders are all about. They're about self. And there's nothing wrong with being about self. But don't sit here and tell me that football is the most important thing to you when you have other ventures. Now, right now, everything's about time. Everything is time sensitive. You only have a small fragment of your life to play college ball. About 3 to 4 years at your peak before you consider entering the highest league of competition, which is the NFL. Okay? So when your dad comes to coach your team, you guys are under considerable amount of pressure. I don't want to say they're under a lot of pressure, because all the excuses are going to be given to why Coach Prime did not succeed if he does not succeed. And I'm not rooting for him not to succeed. I'm rooting for him to succeed. But there are certain things that I see happening that contributes to why they don't do well. But the blind supporters who aren't objective enough, they don't see that. They don't see that there's a reason why he can't be successful operating a football team the way he's operating the football team currently. There's a strong message that's sent when your top players decide to go to Paris during the day of their first team meeting. Now, some of you guys may say it's not that important. It's just a team meeting. Then if the team meeting is not important, then what else? Then what's important then? Then nothing is important. Then practice is not important. The games are not important. The film sessions are not important. This is the same coach. Coach Prime, that talks about paying attention to detail, being punctual, being on time to meetings. But you're going to allow your sons to go to Paris for a model shoot when they're walking down the runway, modeling clothing. I mean, the team has to get their priorities straight. I don't think that football is at the highest on their list. As I've always said, you guys admit it's too easy. This is making me look like I'm some type of prophet, and I'm not. I said you can't have your own agenda and add your own agenda to football. You can't serve two masters. You can't. You can't. If I'm a player on the Colorado team and the top players on the team decide to just go to Paris because that's important to them during our first team meeting, what kind of message does that send to the rest of the team? Now, I need to remind you, this team is not a team that has team chemistry or team camaraderie. What do I mean by team chemistry and team camaraderie? I know you guys don't believe in quantum physics. You guys probably don't even know what that is. You guys don't believe in the metaphysical realm, okay? But there's something in the air called frequency and vibration and energy. It happens when a group of people are together for a while. You start to understand people's tendencies. You guys start to operate on one accord. It happens all the time. You get a bunch of strangers together who don't know each other at first. They're not talking to one another because there's a gap that needs to be bridged. But once that gap is bridged and communication starts to unfold, people start to understand one another. You start to predict people's tendencies, and you can actually do something favorable for somebody before they say it. It happens in relationships. Married couples, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. When you're with somebody long enough, there's a synergistic element that's involved in that relationship that allows it to go smoothly. Things aren't happening to you that are catching you off guard, giving your equilibrium a shock value that it doesn't need all the time. We don't always need to be shocked. Being shocked sometimes causes stress. I didn't know you were going to do this. I didn't know you were going to do that. I didn't know you were going to do that. I didn't know you were going to do this. Well, you know what's going to happen next. It causes a balance in the brain. It causes the brain to function at ease, not at a dis-ease, right? So when you're around a team of young men that have been around each other for quite some time, there's a synergistic flow that happens between all parties. That's what team chemistry is all about. That's what team camaraderie is all about. And it also manifests itself on the football field. You see some quarterbacks and receivers like, how did he know the receiver was going to go there? It's almost like he could throw the ball with his eyes closed and still throw it to the receiver. Or the receiver could run a route and just close his eyes and know the ball's going to be where it needs to be. Those are things that it's not just based upon practice. It takes more than just practice to develop that type of connection. There's a hidden element that the naked eye can't capture. And that's that frequency and vibration that happens in young men amongst men that have been together for quite some time. They share stories. They talk about their past, their experiences. The brain is like a computer. You start to take in all this information, and taking in all that information, you start to configure your own personal algorithms about that person, and you can actually meet that person where they are at. All right, it's called being emotionally aware and being emotionally intelligent, but it takes time to develop that. Colorado University doesn't have that because they're always getting a bunch of players from the transfer portal. It's too much of a turnaround. It's like any organization that has too much of a turnaround. Nothing at the core ever gets established because nobody stays there long enough to establish any credibility. Immediately we get started, they leave, new. Get started, they leave, new. If you continue to get new faces on the football team in regards to the players, an overwhelmingly amount of players. I understand it in college football that players leave, they transfer, but the number of players that leave a program are not as high as you see in Colorado, and the influx of players coming in are not as high as Colorado. Colorado has over 20-something transfers that have came in. That's what? 20. That's about one quarter of your team. And we're not done yet. Right now it's 1/4 of your team. Going into 2/4 of your team. Almost half of your team will be based on transfers. Meaning that these are all new players that don't know each other. It's going to take time to build the team chemistry. We don't have a defensive coordinator as of yet to even start to build chemistry on the defensive side of the ball. But one thing that Coach Prime made sure of is that he made sure he had his offensive coordinator intact. You can see where his focus is on. His focus is on his son. He wants his son to excel at all costs. Defense he doesn't care about. Even though he played defense, I don't think he cares too much about the defense. He just wants to score. He wants to have a high-powered offense, an air raid offense that's just throwing the ball on every play. He wants to see his son have about 500 yards passing the game. Doesn't care too much about the run. These are just things that I have observed. It doesn't make me a hater. That's just what he wants. And this idea, I hear people with the rebuttal saying, well, in Jackson State, he ran the ball. Yeah, that was Jackson State. Jackson State was not on the map. He all of a sudden moves to the Power 5 conference. His son has the ability to now shine and show his prowess via his statistics. You think Coach Prime is not smart enough to know, okay, if my son can do well on this level, he can win the Heisman. So let me kind of pedal back a little bit on the run and focus more on the pass game. That's what he did. At Jackson State, he was more of a competent coach, meaning that he did have more talent than everybody else because he was a hell of a recruiter. But other than that, he ran the team. The team's philosophy in terms of the offensive side of the ball was more balanced. Yeah, he did run the ball more, but all of a sudden he chooses not to run the ball more when he gets to Colorado University because he's on a bigger stage. See, whenever you give somebody like Coach Prime a bigger stage, his principles go out the window. He's gonna do whatever he needs to do in order to shine at that particular moment. Remember the video that he did when he wore a dress? And I'm not bashing him for that. I know people do crazy things for entertainment. You have actors who dress as women. I get it. It's art. I'm not saying that Coach Prime is a secret person that has a transsexual agenda. I'm not saying all that. But I'm making a point to say that he'll do whatever he needs to do to remain relevant. And if it means abandoning your principles as a Christian, as a God-fearing man, you'll wear a dress and prance around on TV and dance and act like a female. You'll do that. You won't have any principles because you're just doing it for now. You're in the now. Whatever they tell you to do now for the money, for the bag, for the fame, he's going to do it. So he gets to Colorado. He's like, well, I did used to run, but I'm not going to run anymore. My son's now here. Power 5 conference, Colorado, all eyes on him. Oh, I'm not going to run. I'm going to pass the ball. I want my son to win the Heisman. It's his personal agenda above all. So let's come back to my original point of why I'm making this video. It sends a wrong message to the team. When you're trying to rebuild off of a season that did not go very well last year, and I don't give a damn if they won 4 games. That team was better. That team, the way it was ran, and they won 4 games off of the chaos on that team, lets me know how talented that team actually is. You bring a bunch of men together their first year, and they win 4 games, and many of the games they were in, and many of the games that they lost was due to coaching. Yeah, it was due to coaching. It's not having a balanced offense. They actually looked competent their last game without Shador. Not saying that the backup quarterback is better than Shador, but the offensive philosophy of the last game made me see Colorado in a different light. I looked at them, I'm like, they're a competent football team that can actually win more games than they did. They wouldn't get blown out of many games because they're not being too predictable. So when 2 of your best players out of the 3, I'm surprised Travis didn't go. Maybe Travis has more sense and says, look, I'm not going down there, man. When 2 of your best players on the team, and it's ironic they both have Sanders as their last name, it tells you the selfishness of the Sanders. It's not about Colorado. I keep telling you guys that. It's about them. They're using Colorado as a stepping stool to uplift their brand. And this is why I think that I did a poll, and you guys can see it on my channel. I did a poll where I asked you guys, do you think Prime is going to go through his contract, a 5-year contract? This is the 2nd year out of the 5-year contract. Many of you guys said no, and I agree. If he doesn't leave after this year, he's going to leave after next year. He's not staying there long. It's a brand building thing. He's going to move on to the next venture and sell his principles to the highest bidder. He's always done that, and that's okay for him. But you guys are continuing to give him so many excuses, or you're hating on him. He's going to succeed. No, he won't succeed when you're running a program like this. You have to set an example with your best players and say, hell no. And not only are they your best players, the offensive side of the ball with your son Shador and the defensive side with your son Shiloh, they're your sons. I would put my foot down and say, no, hell no, you guys are not going. We're trying to rebuild something here. You guys have to sacrifice that multi-dimensional venture for something else. They want to be multi-dimensional. That's what the article said. They want to be multi-dimensional. Well, take your multi-dimensional arts somewhere else. Because when you're playing on a football program, those other players that are on the team are not multi-dimensional. You know what they are? They are one-dimensional. You know what one-dimensional they're focused on? The football team. No, I get it. Of course, you have the academic part as well. We understand that these are student athletes. But in regards to how they approach the program, you have to be all in. You can't miss the team's first meeting. We already don't have a full coaching personnel. We're still missing coaches. We're trying to have our first meeting, piecing together the debacle of a season that we just had previously. And you're telling me you're going to miss the first team's meeting to go to Paris to do a fashion show? I want to hear you guys' comments. Anyone that wants to excuse that. Anyone that has a reason to justify that being okay. It wouldn't even be okay if Colorado University was an established program and they were dominant. That still wouldn't be. That would actually be worse. What message are you sending? Any program in the Power 5 conferences that has their best players missing the first team's meeting, not because they were sick, not because it was a family emergency, not because somebody was doing surgery, no, none of that. It's we go to Paris, got a fashion show. I want to be multidimensional. See, these guys are already stars in their minds. They don't have the killer instinct. They don't know how to get it out of the mud. They're not in the mud. They're walking on marble floors, proverbial speaking. That's an analogy metaphorically. They're walking on marble floors. There's no incentive. There's no grind. There's no assertiveness to take on the season as if this is do or die. They don't have that in them. They don't have that gutter mentality, that grit. They don't have it. And it's going to show on the field. That's why their defense was the way it was. You have a bunch of people, well, not a bunch. The direction of the team goes and flows with how the leaders operate. The coach, Shador. How many times have you guys heard this, that if the best player on your team is the hardest worker, what does it do for everybody else? It makes everybody else work twice as hard. They're like, hold on, he's the best player on the team. He doesn't even need to work this hard. He's already got it. He already has the skills, the gifts, but he's working as if he's trying to make the team, but he's already on the team. What kind of message does that send to the rest of the team? Now, take that same principle that I just said right now, and you see your best player dismissing the team's first meeting to say, hey, I got to go to Paris. What message does that send? It sends a message that football's not that important to me. That's what it sends. So therefore, if football's not important to our best player, why should it be important to me? Now, I'm going to go. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm not saying that these guys' brains are predicated on what Shador and Shiloh does, but it does help. Most of the game is psychological when you get to the Power 5 conferences because there's talent everywhere. What sets other teams over the edge against other teams is the psychological principle, the mental continuity that's built, that's developed amongst the team based upon the sacrifices that each player is making or that a bunch of players are making. Coach Prime talks about being disciplined, watching film and doing this and that is not discipline, Coach. You're saying one thing, but you're advocating another thing. You're permitting, because what you allow is what you promote. If you allow your sons to go there, then you're promoting, self over the team. And I think that is disheartening because these are your sons. That actually makes you doubly worse. It's a reflection of you, Coach Brian. You're not about football either because you allowed your sons to miss the first team's meeting for a fashion show. So you tell me how a team like that is going to be successful. These are just little things that we have to look at, little signs that helps you or gives you a better idea to render a prognosis of what you think the season is going to look like. You look at the current situations that are unfolding right in front of you. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be right. They could probably have a great season, but the percentages of them having a great season is unlikely. Due to all the changes, lack of team continuity, team camaraderie, team chemistry, their backs are against the wall. I think it's going to be more challenging in Prime's second year than it was his first year. It will. It just will. And we're going to see what kind of coach he is. Will he stay the course and act like a competent coach, or will he do what he always does. Find people to throw underneath the bus. Be non-critical of his quarterback, which is his son, because his son could do no wrong. It's always the offensive line's fault. And if he's holding the ball, it's because receiver's not open. His son is just always right. In which there's a problem there. Because the same level of accountability that he puts on other players, he doesn't put on his son. Do you think that if Cormani missed Cormani McClain, the cornerback, the 5-star recruit that he got last year from high school, that I think he's doing a horrible job with developing that kid. I think that kid should have went to Florida instead of went somewhere else. But that's just my opinion. I feel like he's not gonna. Well, anyway, let me stay on topic. If Cormani McClain decided to say, "Hey, I'm gonna miss the team's first meeting because I don't know, I have a fashion show to go to, or not even a fashion show, I just have some other endeavor out there because I want to be multidimensional, coach." Do you think that Coach Prime would be okay with that? I'm gonna wait. I'm going to ask the question again for you guys in the back that didn't hear me. If Coach Prime sat down with Cormani got Coach Prime's attention, said, can I talk to you, Coach? And Coach Prime opens up his doors and say, come on in, Cormani, let's talk. Cormani says, Coach, I'm not going to be able to come to the first team's meeting because I have something to do. I have something that's really important that's on my mind. I love modeling clothes. I love fashion. I want to be multidimensional, Coach. I'm going to be missing the first meeting. Do you think that Coach Prime would be okay with that? I'm waiting. Answer the question. Will he be okay with that? No, he would not be okay with that. You know that. It's a rhetorical question. I know we all know what the answer is. How hard he was on Cormani McClain, the excuses he was giving as to why Cormani was not playing. Because he wasn't in the playbook, he wasn't being disciplined, he wasn't being this, he wasn't being that, he wasn't working hard enough in practice. So tell me, how is that comparable to your sons being allowed to skip the team's first meeting to go to Paris for a fashion show that they're in? Now, does that start to make sense for those that call me a hater? I'm just being objective. Now, I implore you to do the same thing, folks. It helps. It helps you get rid of the residue in your brain that's clogging you from actually thinking critically because you don't want to. You want to put those blockers in there and push back on everything that anyone says that goes against what Coach Prime is doing. You know it's wrong. Now, some of you guys may say, you're not that critical of other coaches. I don't care about other coaches. I don't care about those other white coaches. I really don't. I care about Coach Prime. I want to see him succeed. So I'm going to be very critical about the things I care about. If I care about my car, I'm going to be very critical. You know how you guys are. When you just first buy a new car, aren't you looking at your car to see if you have any dents on it? Aren't you looking at your car to see if you have any scratches? You know why you're doing that? Because you care about your vehicle. You're being very critical. You have a critical eye. You're looking for the blemishes because you care about that vehicle. You want to see it look nice. I want to see Coach Prime excel, but it's not going to stop me from being critical. I can't have my emotions block my logic. That cannot happen. That's retarded. That's a prerequisite to mental illness when you do that over a long period of time. And people do that. You open yourself up to illegitimate musings. You end up having conversations with people, and people, they'll hear you out, but after you leave, they're like, man, that guy doesn't make any sense. You know why you call me a hater? You know why some of you guys call me a hater? Because I'm making sense. You know, in a world that's ran by lies, speaking the truth is not something that's accepted. You're chastised for that. You're chastised for that. There has to be principles and standards, folks, in anything that we do. In the realm of marriage, in the confines of marriage between a man and a woman, there's standards. There's certain things that you don't do in front of kids. There's certain things you don't do in front of your wife. There's certain things you don't do to your wife, or if you're a woman, there's certain things you don't do to your husband. We have to operate on certain principles or standards. Whether you agree with them or not, there needs to be standards in everything. Even on the roads that we drive on, there are standards. You have speed limits. You have traffic laws that you have to abide by. Those things are put in place for safety precautions, for safety reasons, of course, but to make sure that everybody doesn't just do whatever the hell they want. And right now, Colorado University are doing whatever the hell they want. You're trying to tell me in a Nick Saban ran program I hate to always use Nick Saban as the example. That's just the name that rolls off my head. You're trying to tell me that if his best player, Melrose, let's say Nick Saban did not retire and he was coming back for one last season, and his quarterback, Melrose, says, hey, coach, I'm going to miss the team's first meeting because I have a fashion show to go to. You think Nick Saban's going to be, all right, son, take care of your business? Exactly. But, when you worship Coach Prime, he can do no wrong. See, that's why we have to remove that strong affection that we have towards people. We should actually have more affection. We should have more affinity and affections that are more endearing to our own logic, meaning that you should cherish the way you think. You should cherish principles. You should cherish being critical, because the more critical you are of other people, the more critical you become of yourself. You start to hold yourself to that higher standard because you don't want to come across as being hypocritical. I'm not a coach, but you better believe if I was a coach of a team, I'm not going to be doing what Coach Prime is doing. How can I? I'm being critical of certain things that he's doing. Why would I repeat what I don't like? That's insanity. Don't do that. You pull a cord on that. I'm going to miss the team's first meeting to go to a fashion show to Paris because I want to be multi-dimensional. Multi-dimensional my R's, man. Multi-dimensional my R's. You can go ahead and be multi-dimensional. There's no multi-dimensions. There's only one dimension. And that's your football team. You give 110% to that while you're there. You live in the now. You can't separate, man. You can't leave to go to Paris for a fashion shoot. You just can't do that. That sends the wrong message. Already. Nothing is being learned. The fact that even that game where they played against, I don't know if it was UCLA game. I don't know what game it was where, not the game that they got their jewelry stolen, but the game where during halftime, they said that on Shiloh's or Shador's Instagram or something, his social media, a message was posted. Like, are you kidding me? Now, of course, they said it wasn't Shador. It must have been one of his handlers, but still, like, those are things that shouldn't happen. Even if it was somebody else that handles your social media account, you let them know, like, during games, man, we're black. We're off. We're off. Before the game, halftime, after the game, maybe the next day you can start up, but not during the day of the game. There has to be standards, folks. You have to have standards. If you don't have standards, you're gonna fall for anything. And right now, the Sanders are just chasing self. They're just chasing self-promotion. They're very self-aggrandizing in what they do. Why do you think every player that was hitting Shador was doing the Shador back in his face? They were rubbing it back in his face. That's what happens when you come new to a conference and you're not humble. It's okay to do all those things in the locker room. You see it all the time in the NFL or in college football, where a team wins a game and they go in the locker room, they're all dancing, the coach is dancing in the middle. Yeah, that's where you can do your dances and do all that stuff. But in the middle of a game, when you're flat doing your Shador watch, saying you know what time it is, flashing your watch, I mean, I'm not as hard on Shador as other people were, but I think that your first year in Colorado, like, come on, man. Like, you don't need to do that. Just score your effort touchdown and you could do that in the locker room. But it's not about the team, it's about self. That's why he can't do that. He can't taper that down. It's hard for him to do anything that's bigger than himself. He can't perceive anything bigger than himself. And he's not willing to put the team above himself. He's willing to put himself above the team. Like father, like son. It's in the DNA. It's in the genetics. He even said it. Coach Prime says, he reminds me a lot of me. But yeah, I thought Shiloh had more sense than that. I think the brothers should have been like, nah, we can't do that. We're trying to win this year. But I don't think they're trying to win. They're not. They want to earn as much money as they can. They don't believe in themselves, because if they truly believed in the team, they would not go to that. They would not go to that fashion show. Not when you're looking ahead to see Not when you're looking ahead and you know in your heart of hearts that your season is going to be good. When you believe in the core guys that you have and you believe in the coaching staff. And even if you don't believe, you're kind of skeptical, but you're willing to stay there and put in the work to make sure that you have a successful season. But when you bail on the team's first meeting to go to Paris for a fashion show, that says a lot. That speaks volumes. That one act renders a lot of messages to be interpreted. It interprets that you don't care about football as much as people think you do. It renders the message of that the fans are more passionate about the football team than you are. It lets us know that football is not the most important thing. It lets us know that you are willing to look out for yourself more than the betterment of the entire team. So, what kind of players want to play with guys who are supposed to be the best players on the team? Why would other players follow you as a leader? You've already showed us that we're not that important. You've already showed us that the team is not important to you. You've already showed us that being multidimensional is what's more important to you. So how are you going to have our backs? And why should we have your back? So these are the little things that I look at. And these are the seeds that are being sown in the earlier stages that are going to sprout later on in the season. It's going to cause the locker room to be fragmented again. And a bunch of guys that have been thrown together via coming through the transfer portal are going to be separated again. There's no team cohesion at all. Mind you, you're getting different guys from different programs. And every program is ran differently. So there's no culture that's established. In order to establish a culture, you have to establish it by making personal sacrifices to show, especially if you're one of the best players on the team. You have to show the other group of young men that, hey, we're about football over here. I have the opportunity to go to Paris to do this, to do that, but I'm scratching all that because of y'all. That's a speech that Shador and Shiloh could have used to motivate the players that are on the team right now. We have NIL money. We can do whatever we want, but we're willing to skip out on getting our personal bags because we care so much about this team. I could have went to Paris today for a fashion show, but man, F that fashion show. I love y'all. I care about y'all. I want us to be here together. This is our first team meeting. This is how we're gonna play. This is how we're gonna go about things. This is the degree of seriousness we're gonna take into this football season. I'm here for y'all. I love y'all. See, you could turn it around for your favor. We understand that there are plenty of opportunities out there for Shiloh and Shador. Yes, they can be multidimensional, but you can use that aura of multidimensionalisms. You can use that for your favor, and use it towards your team. And you can go against it, meaning that you don't have to physically be in Paris, but you can let your players know, you can let your team know, say, hey man, I'm missing out a lot because I love y'all. I could do this, I could do that, but I chose to be here. That's the kind of message that you can use. All the opportunities that Shiloh and Shador have, or has, they could put those things to the back burner. And they can let it be known that, like, yeah, we had a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things, but we didn't want to. Because we were trying to build something here in Colorado. But then again, if it's your last year, and it's a Shiloh's last year as well, they listen to their father. These are all sentiments from the father. They know the father's not going to be there for the long haul, so they're not worrying about building anything there. Because when you build anything, there needs to be a process that's put in place, and there's no system. You're just getting a bunch of guys, getting a bunch of talent, throwing it together, and see how it works. Get the best offensive line for my son so he can throw for a lot of stats. It's backyard football, folks. It's not a program because they have no standard. There's no culture. There's no principle. The only culture they have is hip-hop culture. But hip-hop culture cannot merge itself with football and be successful. We're not running a hip-hop program. We're running a football program. There needs to be a degree of discipline and accountability on the coach. So when you hear people like me or Jason Whitlocks of the world that are being critical of Coach Fromm, he needs to critique. He needs it. But will he listen to the critique? Of course he's not going to listen to it. He's Coach Fromm. Who the hell are we to tell him what to do? The level of arrogance that comes with being Coach Fromm, it's so immeasurable and it's so inexplicable to see how a man who first comes to a Power 5 conference doesn't have the humility to run a program with some type of order and control. You can't let your sons do that, Coach Prime. You know you're wrong for that. You would not allow any other player to do that. You wouldn't. So that there lets me know that the coach and the best player is not all in. So if you're a young recruit, why would you want to go to Colorado anyway? Why would you want to go there? Where football is not the end-all be-all? Where football is not the end-all be-all? Why would you want to go there? Yeah, not a very good idea, man. We are in January. Your coaching staff is still incomplete, and you have your best players skipping on first team's meeting to go to Paris for a fashion show. Good job. Good job. And I dare, please don't call me a hater. If you're going to leave a comment and you think that I'm wrong for this analysis that I just gave, please be specific and tell me why it's right for your best players on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball to skip the team's first meeting to go to Paris. Now, if you say meetings aren't important, then if a meeting is not important, then practice is not important. If practice is not important, then field study can't be important. And if field study is not important, then the games are not important. You see how that works? You can't pick and choose what's important. It's all part of the football program. It starts with the meetings, the practices, the training, the watching videos. It leads up to, it's not about the game. You know the infamous video that Iverson gave when he was talking about, he's talking about practice? We're talking about the game. He's talking about practice? Well, practice is important because how you practice should affect the way you play. I don't give a damn how talented you are. And if you're so talented that you don't need practice, the other players on your team need to see you there. You're part of the team. It goes back to team chemistry and team camaraderie. Sometimes as a leader, it's what you do that inspires your other players on the team to play even harder. You don't skip on anything if you're one of the best players on the team. I think it would be better if a person who's insignificant to the team decided to skip the first team's meeting. Then it doesn't matter. It's like, well, we don't even know who that player is. And we don't like it. It's not something that we should promote. But man, that's bad in itself. But to have the best players on the team miss the first team's meeting to go do a fashion show in Paris, and you're going to tell me that's okay? Please explain to me how that's okay. And please tell me how that's not on Coach Prime. Because he's the head coach. Not only is he head coach, even more important than that, he's your father. So he permitted it. He allowed it. Multidimensional. You'll see how far multidimensional takes you when you're running a college football program. We'll see how many wins and losses you have. And we'll see what kind of product you put out there on the field when you have a multidimensional team that's into different dimensions and not all focused on one thing. Thank you for listening. Leave a comment. Thank you. Bye.